Good evening and welcome. You're watching the News Hour Agenda. I'm Padmaja Joshi. The entire Ram Mandir movement was one that changed the history of our country. It changed forever the way that politics was done in our country. And now we're at a point where the construction of a Ram Mandir is about to start. And as a country, we are now facing the question, what will life and politics be in India after the Ram Mandir's construction starts?
The News Hour at 10, debate number 1 on Times Now, Super Prime Time.
Just a few days away from the construction of Ram Mandir at Ayodhya, at the Ram Janmabhoomi starting, and already the Bhoomi Pujan has been dragged into politics, objections have been raised. But what really is the significance of Lord Ram and the temple for the country and for the Indian civilization? To talk about that is with us right now Kerala's governor and in fact scholar, Arif Muhammad Khan Sahab. Sir, thank you very much for speaking 2 times now. I want to start by asking you, you've said in the past that Ram belongs to everyone. But not too many people right now are following that thought. They think that this is a Hindu god and the building of the temple is a sign of Hindu triumphalism.
No, religion is only a small part of that. The bigger canvas is Indian civilization. I told you the Indian civilization was not built on the basis of Astha. Astha in the religious sense of the term. Indian civilization is built on the Indian way of life. And Indian way of life, this is Swami Vivekananda said. Swami Vivekananda, who is considered the modern prophet and the one who really understood the soul of the Indian civilization and culture. What Swami Vivekananda said? He described his life mission. He said, I want to teach unto mankind their divinity and its expression in all movements of life. So it is inclusive culture, inclusive civilization. Swami Vivekananda further says, he says, I shall go to the church of a Christian, shall kneel there. I shall go to the mosque of a Muslim, I shall offer my devotions there, I shall go to the forest and sit with the Hindu who is meditating there and trying to realize the supreme truth. So this was today the whole world, particularly during the last 150, 200 years, the whole world, all countries are trying to become pluralistic. And they realize that there is no other option available to them. But India has been a pluralistic Bahuda. The term used in our ancient books is Bahuda. India is a Bahuda civilization since beginning of its journey.
Sir, picking up that thread, and if I could just put it very crudely, when you explained the entire principle of Sanatan Dharma, what we were taught is, to put it very crudely, live and let live. So it will be argued then that if the entire concept was to live and let live, why couldn't the Babri Masjid just be allowed to be?
No, it is not.
Why couldn't the Gyan Vyapi Mosque just be allowed to be? Why are there calls now? Why are there calls now that there should be a legal challenge to the existence of the Gyan Vyapi Mosque, the Shahi Masjid, that this is only going to set the ball rolling in that direction? This is to erase all symbols of Muslims, to put it for lack of a better word.
I have already told you, Sanatan is not about living and let living. Sanatan is about accepting and respecting every tradition.
Correct.
It is not just to live and let live.
Then why not respect the Gyan Vyapi Mosque? Why not respect the Babri Masjid as it was?
Why not, you are saying why not respect?
That's the argument that will be made.
People who okay, arguments may be given, but here something, an issue that was pestering us since last more than 500 years. Now we have reached a stage, we have seen so many unfortunate, I shall not go into details, but so many ugly and unfortunate incidents. And now finally through the Supreme Court, we have been able to find a solution to the problem which was vexing us, which was affecting our national life. This is the time when instead of trying to resurrect the old fears and anxieties, this is the time when we can behave in a manner so that good all around, we are able to create good feelings, feelings of understanding, feelings of harmony, feelings of brotherhood, particularly taking into consideration that except for few exceptions where the complaint was made on the basis of what happened, what was done by those who had come from outside, their actions, these complaints were there, and now instead of analyzing these things, I think this is the time when we should move on. We should try to create better understanding, better harmony, better fraternal feelings.
Sir, it's very interesting because
and respect for each other.
That was largely the response from all communities across India when the Supreme Court judgment came. Yet, there are outliers. For example, I want to quote to you Mr. Asaduddin Owaisi, who says even today that for him, Ayodhya will always be synonymous with the Babri Masjid. He says that facts have not won, faith has won. And he will always consider that it was his Babri Masjid there. What would you say to such arguments?
Well, he is entitled to his opinions, but the masses, I'm talking generally people belonging to various denominations, they are not interested in the conflict. And you have referred to him, but he represents a party which was responsible for delaying the freedom of Hyderabad for 1 year. Do you know India became free in August 1947? And it was because of the party that he represents that Hyderabad became part of that freedom, could become part of that freedom only in October 1948. And that too, this party forced the government of India's hands. And we had to resort to police action because they were persecuting, they were indulging in violence, they were harassing people. And when that reached a boiling point, then government of India in October 1948 was left with no option but to resort to police action. So therefore, the comments of such people, I won't like to give any importance to them. And I will advise you that if possible, although I know they have a news value, but if you can ignore them, that will be better for the people and that will be better for India.
We would love to do that, sir, but the thing is that these voices are so shrill and they do find resonance with a large section of the population. We wish it didn't, but they do. Also, since you're a constitutional authority, the other objection being raised, sir, is to the presence of the Prime Minister at Bhumi Pujan. There are politicians who have said, why does the Prime Minister of India need to go for the Bhumi Pujan of a temple? Constitutionally, how do you respond to this objection?
You know, if you consider a purely religious function, then one can raise the objections. But if this is not so much religion, it has more to do with the culture of India. It has more to do with the civilization of India. Can you imagine the Indian culture and civilization without Ram? If it has to do with the civilization, I will give you another example. Look, all the national mottos, the mottos of the university, mottos of the national institutions. Who had given those names? They were given in the early 50s. Who was the Prime Minister? Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. And out of 150 mottos, more than 150 mottos, which I collected for various national institutions, they are either from the Vedas or some Upanishadic lines. So have they been used because these lines, they have some religious significance because they come from Vedas and Upanishad, or these lines because they speak of great wisdom? When you have these two lines on the main dome of the Parliament House, Ayam nich paroveti garna lagu cheta sam, udar charita nam tu vasudev kutumkam. This is on the main gate of the Central Hall. And then almost on every gate of the Parliament House, there are lines from Vedas, there are lines from Upanishad. Are they there because they are rooted in religion? No, they are rooted in wisdom. They are rooted in Indian civilization and culture. That is the point which I was making earlier. The question is from which prism you are looking at the whole thing. If you are looking at it from the Western prism, from the Semitic prism, then what is going to happen in Ayodhya is a religious function. But if you look at it from the Indian prism, from Indian paradigm, then it has less to do, rather nothing to do with religion. It has a lot to do with Indian civilization and culture. Indian civilization and culture is not legacy of just one denomination of India. Indian civilization and culture is the legacy of every denomination. A person may belong to any denomination. If I am an Indian, that is my heritage. That is my legacy. And I am not the first who is saying it. Much before me, much before me, more than 100 years back, Sir Sayyid, when he was given a reception by the Arya Samaj in Gurdaspur, while replying to this address, he made the complaint. If I use his own words, he said, "Mujhe aapse shikayat hai. I have a complaint against you. Why don't you call me a Hindu? Hindu is not a religious term. Hindu is one who is born in India." This is what Sir Sayyid had said.
Sir, I want to return to a question I asked earlier about the insecurities. Yes, a large section wants peace, but can you... Sir, insecurities about what will happen after the Ram Mandir. For example, there are people who are wondering if this was only going to set the ball rolling. The slogan earlier of Abhi to Jhaki hai, Kashi Mathura Baki hai, is this going to be leading towards similar attempts in Varanasi, in Mathura? What happens then? People are fearful about that.
I really do not, I really feel that we should not indulge in kite flying. We are not a banana republic. We are the world's largest democracy, one of the most ancient civilization of the world. Many contemporary civilizations have disappeared from the scene. Indian civilization is thriving and continuing. It is only because of certain basic things. And basic thing is that we are a rule of law society. The laws are there. Nobody is going to take the law in their hands. There are laws in place. And never forget, we are a democratic society. So democratic society, simply because somebody is saying something here, somebody is saying something there, no. In our country, things are done through institutions and through laws. And for lawmaking, the institutions are there. So on these accounts, I feel that this is, unfortunately, despite many good things, we also have certain negatives. The negative is that during the British rule, for many, many years, every policy, every executive action was taken to accentuate communal differences and heighten sense of community. On that account, that has become part of our thinking. And then this anxiety and fear has occasionally, it grips the minds of our people. I think now is the time. During the British period, it was a zero-sum game. They told us, if you behave, you will benefit. If you don't behave, then we will give the benefits to the people who belong to the other denomination. Today, it is not a zero-sum game. Today, we are all one people. Today, if something is there which harms, there is nothing which can harm only a portion of the Indians. If it harms, it will harm everybody. If it benefits, it will benefit everybody. We also need to get rid of that colonial mindset, which saw India and Indian people as a zero-sum game. That game is no more there. Now the country will have to, now we are a free people. We are masters of our own destiny. How can we do anything? We realize that we can't do anything which will create dissensions in the society. We need peace, we need harmony, we need fraternity. We have to pursue the constitutional goals. So all these things should not...
And we can never lose sight of the fact that this ultimately came from the Supreme Court. Sir, I want to ask you on a personal note as well. The Congress recently has started saying, leaders like Salman Khurshid, Digvijay Singh, they are saying that why has this Bhumi Pujan been turned into a BJP RSS party? Why not the Congress? Where is the Congress in all of this? What do you think of the role of the Congress, the Ram Mandir, and where it stands today?
I don't want to comment on the remarks of the politicians. They themselves need to find the answers. Everybody should introspect and see, because I know if I go into the history, that I know for sure that in 1986, and it is not my opinion, everybody's opinion, whether the historians or the political commentators, that in 1986, after taking the decision to reverse the judgment of the Supreme Court and to manage the very, very adverse fallout
of the Shah Bano judgment,
the government started looking for, after Shah Bano judgment. And then first, it is true that Locke was opened in 1986. It was the Congress government. Shilanyas was done at that point only. But if you want to take credit for that, then instead of opposing it, it will be better that you join the whole thing and create better atmosphere in the country.
All right. On that note, and that hopeful note that this is going to show the way for a better atmosphere in the country of harmony, of an India that is looking ahead and is not about a zero-sum game anymore. Thank you very much. Arif Mohammad Khan Saab, for having spoken to me.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the big news coming in at this moment. The Rajasthan Assembly session has been given a go-ahead from the 14th of August by the Governor Kalraj Mishra, which means that the standoff between the CM and the governor that had gone on for so long. Remember, there were two resolutions that were passed by the Rajasthan cabinet saying that a special session of the Rajasthan Assembly should be called. Officially, the Rajasthan government said that they want to discuss the corona situation in the state. However, the governor has also said that adequate precautions should be taken to ensure that there is no contamination, considering that this is the time of a pandemic. The assembly session will take place from the 14th of August, which means just about 15 days are there for either side to make sure that their numbers are in order. We, of course, will be keeping a close eye.